It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That's Alan Saunders. Alan, what's going on?
Steelers practiced outside in the rain today, which they do not usually do. But the weather is not supposed to be great for Thursday night in Cleveland, so I get it. However, as someone who has to watch practice and film practice and photograph practice in the rain sucks. So I'm still drying out. I'm still a little soggy, maybe a little cranky, but I'm here. I'm ready to roll. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, certainly the weather I feel like has kind of played into just the vibes of today. It's just been like normally around this time of day it starts getting dark anyway, but like it's been dark all day. So like very little sunlight at all, and jumping right from work into doing this podcast, but no complaints. I'm here. So
let's do it.
We'll talk some Steelers ball. We'll get into it. Of course, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit us in the comments with anything that we're going to talk about today, questions for future episode, all that good stuff. Maybe we'll get into some questions at the end of the show. But Alan, first things first. Actually, the first thing I want to bring up, I don't know that we necessarily had this on the agenda, but transaction, Eric Rowe back in the fold for the Steelers. And you mentioned that you were kind of surprised that it was him being brought back to the practice squad, not just them bringing Terrell Edmunds back into the mix on the practice squad, but Eric Rowe, obviously some familiarity there. Shouldn't take him long to jump back in the swing of things here. Spent the back half of the season with us last year, was active for 3 games, I believe, at the end of the season. So, and made some splash as well. He had a pick against Cincinnati, forced a fumble against the Ravens in the last game of the regular season. So, Eric Rowe back in the mix. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's a little surprising to me that they preferred Eric Rowe to Terrell Edmunds. Like, I just think, one, I think Edmunds is a better player. He's a more useful special teamer. And two, he's more of a backup to Deshaun Elliott that they don't really have with anybody else. Whereas, like, KZ and Rowe are pretty similar players. I mean, Rowe's a little bit more versatile, I think. KZ's a little bit younger and a little bit better, but yeah, like I don't know, it's a little surprising to me that they preferred Rowe to Edmunds. I think I would have the other way, but yeah, and Edmunds today had a tryout with the Chicago Bears, I think it was, and so I mean, I think there's definitely I don't know, it's interesting because I think Edmunds was playing really well for him.
I agree. I mean, especially the contributions on special teams, I thought were certainly, like, anybody that they've had jump in and take in a role on special teams, I felt like has been able to jump on that moving train, to steal Tomlinism, and contribute. So I was impressed, at least what he was bringing to the table there. But I guess, they don't need the gunner as long as they're going to keep James Pierre in the mix. Ben Skronik's obviously been great at doing that. So yeah, but I'm curious to see what the plans are for Eric Rowe, if we see him get elevated at all, if he gets a helmet, we'll see. But I liked what he brought to the team last year, when they had a flurry of injuries and had guys like him, Trenton Thompson down the stretch, contributing in the ways that they were. So good to see Eric Rowe back.
Yeah,
right,
how about this?
Go ahead.
I mean, as good as Eric Rowe was for the Steelers last year, when they called him off the couch, as Mike Tomlin called it, put him in, started 3 games down the stretch, started the playoff game. I talked to him today. No one called him all offseason. He got not one phone call from a team about a tryout, a practice squad spot, training camp spot. That's like unbelievable to me, that as well as he played in 3 games for the Steelers last year. I mean, I knew he hadn't been on a team, but I thought maybe he was, oh, I don't want to play there, or, didn't want to be on, I think he was very okay with missing training camp. But that just shocked me that nobody even called for guys won 2 Super Bowls and looked really good last year. Very surprising. He did say he got his pilot's license, so he's been just flying his wife around in his downtime, trying out different cities to go to lunch to. But yeah, it's nice work if you can get it. But pretty happy.
Why is that like a thing? Like Miles Jack last year, pilot's license, and then why is that a thing
I don't know. apparently that is the career path. You leave the Steelers and you learn to fly. I don't know.
Okay, well,
Now he's
anyways,
back.
Eric Rowe back in the mix. Maybe a little bit of I want to go through some injury updates here because Alan, at least just on the surface, to me, it looks like pretty much everybody going to be good. Besides, we knew Alex Highsmith wasn't going to play in this one, but like other than that, the only guys that didn't practice today were because of rest. So, is there really like anything to monitor at this point, other than like is Cory Trice going to play? But it sounds like he's going to.
Yeah, Michael Pruitt and Cory Trice, both full participants today. Pruitt was the one that like hadn't, in their estimated, simulated, whatever you want to call it, practice report on Monday. He was a DNP, full participant today. That's 4 practices three real practices in a row for Cory Trice at full. I think Cory's healthy. I'm not sure if he's going to play. He wants to. He's ready. So. I mean, to me, I think that's going to happen. I think you probably see with Jaylen Warren looking fine. We did get a comment about Jaylen Warren. He said it was really just a random thing where like he didn't get hurt or anything. He just kind of woke up. I guess it was Thursday last week and his back was really bothering him. And so he just took it easy for a couple days and eventually went away. He's not really sure what happened or how it happened or why, but thankful that he was able to get back out there. So with Warren back, I assume that Jonathan Ward will go back on through waivers and go back down to the practice squad, and we'll see Cory Trice activated. I don't know what that helmet math looks like there. With Pruitt also looking like he's going to dress. I mean, Scotty Miller is one. I think it looks like a pretty obvious scratch. Not sure where you get another one to dress Cory Trice, but that's a problem for someone else. But yeah, I think Cory's healthy, and I think he will be elevated from the IR this week.
Yeah. Okay. So good to know they're getting healthier. Obviously, it seems. So is there anybody else that's still on IR that we're waiting for to return?
Yeah, sure. Roman Wilson and Montravius Adams both have to miss this game, but could, in theory, come back next week.
Have we heard anything about them?
Mont has a little bit longer to go.
Okay.
He had a knee sprain. He's got a couple weeks still. Roman was just a hamstring that he aggravated. So, I mean, I think when Pat did that last year, I think it was 5 weeks for him. Next week would be 4 for Roman. He has been running on his own. I wouldn't think that I would think there's a chance he plays against the Bengals. Not for sure, but like I would expect to see him in practice at some point next week.
Okay. There we go. All right, good stuff. Typically on Thursdays, we talk about what coordinators had to say in their availabilities. That took place today. Alan, what did we have to take away from the availabilities of Art Smith and Teryl Austin? We'll start with Art Smith.
Art Smith blames the downfall of American society on Apple. He's just complaining about people's attention spans and saying it's all Apple's fault because we're all addicted to our phones. Basically was talking about the Steelers red zone woes. And while, basically his point was they may look like a big deal right now, but if you keep working by the end of the year, it may look very different. And he referenced his 2019 team in Tennessee, which actually started out quite poor and ended up as the best red zone team in the country that year, as sometimes you just need to work through some things. Obviously, the Steelers not satisfied with their red zone game last week, getting inside, was it 3 trips inside the 20 without a touchdown, 2 field goals, and 1 turnover. And he said the turnovers are the real big thing. 2 weeks in a row, the Steelers with a red zone turnover, fumble by Jaylen Warren at the 1-yard line against the Commanders. Very ill-advised pass by Russell Wilson to Darnell Washington. Man, I looked at that play a whole bunch. I know people are yelling at Washington. That's just a terrible pass. Like I can't. I mean, and Washington is not the world's best athlete. Like he don't move that well. That ball could not be there. And so those two are the things that are really sticking out to Arthur Smith. Obviously, I put forth my my Justin Fields plan, and he talked a lot about that as well. But I just want your take on the red zone. Are you they're what, like 31st in red zone offense right now? It's not good. Is this a crisis level situation for you, or are you on the Arthur Smith wavelength here of just keep rolling the ball out there and chipping away and things will get better?
Well, I think there's a lot of factors that need to be brought into this conversation because I would say, one, I don't necessarily think that there's like the personnel here to do a bunch more with, but I think that some of the stuff has been curious. Like, I'm not sure exactly what you're going to do with a guy like Calvin Austin inside the 5 yard line. I would want the bigger bodied guys out there, whether it's 3 tight ends or whatever. I would be getting them on the field more often there than what I've seen. But it's been a trend for Art, not just in Pittsburgh, like even in Atlanta. Like I really think since he had his run in Tennessee where things were really clicking offensively, things haven't been good in the red zone. And of course, look at the QB play that he had in Atlanta. That's obviously going to play into it, how poor they've been there. But I think that there's a lot of, that's to me where it looks a bit uninspired, is the creativity within the red zone. I think ultimately, like, we've seen them be able to move the ball, and I like a lot of the stuff that Art does. But to me, when it's like really magnified on those weighty downs and in the red zone, that's where I've been scratching my head quite a bit, specifically when it comes to the personnel they're putting on the field in those situations.
Yeah, and I think the offensive line, while playing pretty well, is not like so good that they can just overwhelm people with talent. You know what I mean? Like, they can't line up at the 2 yard line and 3 tight ends and just be like, hey, we're going to hand it to Najee 3 times and think it's going in. Like they're not playing that well up front that I think they just, in fact, I think there's like I'm with you that I think the play calling is a little bit uninspired, but sometimes uninspired play calling doesn't matter. I mean, the Ravens are really good in the red zone. I think their red zone play calling stinks. They just have Lamar Jackson. Nobody else does. Like, I think the red zone is the area where X's and O's generally matter the least, where it's mostly just about the ability of the players you have. And I think that's where, look, it's just not an offense overflowing with talented guys. Like, and where they are talented, they're young and inexperienced. And I think that shows in the red zone. I'm not sure this is a problem that I see really getting fixed to like a significant degree. I don't think they'll be, bottom of the league, but like I'm not expecting them to be good either, just because, like, where are the guys that you expect them to win with?
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so we've talked about the utilization of Justin Fields in the red zone for sure, but other than that, what is it that you think that there maybe is something that they can try differently? Is it, seeing 3 tight ends on the field more often, less wide receivers? Is it, obviously just the incorporation as we go along here that's going to happen with Mike Williams within there being inserted more? Like, what is the answer, or potential answer, I should say?
I'm not sure. I think they need to find a way to be 2-dimensional in the red zone. Like, even when things were working with Justin Fields, it was mostly working when Justin Fields was just running it. Like, right. He did have a really high, he has like the 6th best completion percentage passing in the red zone. But he had 5 rushing touchdowns of the 8 that he scored. So, like, it's mostly just running success. I don't think they're having enough pass success. And to me, the big obvious, like, giant waving red flag is like, where's Pat Freiermuth? He did get the touchdown against Washington on a play that you can run over and over again. But I just think they've got to find a way to get him more involved in the red zone. If that pass to Darnell Washington is thrown to Pat Freiermuth, I bet it's not intercepted, because he's a significantly better athlete and he can adjust better to a ball that's badly overthrown and just find his way back there and at least break it up, if not catch it. Washington isn't making that kind of body control adjustment. He's, as Russ said today, 315 pounds. Russ said, I don't know about that, but he's a big dude.
You know what? I was just about to ask if Russ spoke at all or today, or like, what did he say regarding that interception, if anything?
Yeah, so I was not in the Russ scrum, but I did read the transcript. So he didn't really talk about the interceptions. It wasn't asked about the interceptions specifically. He was asked about just what kind of target Darnell Washington is. And it's interesting because he compared him to Jimmy Graham. And I'm like, yeah, Jimmy Graham might have caught that. You don't have a Jimmy Graham there.
That's what I was just about to say. If he was Jimmy Graham,
you have Roderick Jones without dreads. Like, I don't know what, you just, if you're thinking that's Jimmy Graham, I understand why you threw that ball where you did, but that is not Jimmy Graham. That is Darnell
Yeah.
Washington. I just, I think some of that'll come with Russ playing more with guys, but I think they've got to find a way to use Pat more. To me, that's the one guy where it's like, where are the targets in general? And if you're struggling in the red zone, you have a really good tight end. I think that's a good place for him.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Back to Art though. Anything else that came of?
Yeah, he talked a lot about Justin Fields, not just in terms of the red zone, but just in general about the idea of Justin Fields plays. And he said, like, I don't like this isn't a gimmick. Like, this isn't a gadget thing. Like, if I'm going to use Justin Fields, I'm going to use him. But like, he's like, I have two starting quarterbacks. Like, to him, this isn't any different than like, oh, we'll run these plays for Jaylen Warren and we'll run these plays for Najee Harris. Like, it's not a gimmick to him. And so he's not going to like put like, I don't think you're going to see. Now he was asked directly about this and he said, we'll see, but I think he's being coy. Like, I don't think you're going to see like Russ and Justin on the field at the same time, or Justin Fields playing wide receiver, or like, like, I don't think you're going to see.
It's a dang shame.
I don't think you're going to see a lot of gadgetry. I think there's a hesitation from Arthur Smith to turn Justin Fields into a gadget player. I think he wants him to be a quarterback and thinks he's a good quarterback and will use him to play quarterback. But I don't think you're going to see a lot of just like sheer gimmickry. And look, Russ has run Wildcat before. So and in fact, I know it's in. So like, some of that stuff is on the table, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of that. I do think you will see more and more of the team just using Justin Fields as a second quarterback for certain situations. Art actually said he wanted to get him in there for the 4th and 1 play, but they weren't sure if they got it or not, and they were waiting to see the spot on 3rd and 1. And by the time they were sure it was 4th and 1, there was only 27 seconds left, and they didn't want to make a substitution. And then it was like, well, do we call a timeout? No, we'll just run the ball with Najee and C. But those quarterback sneaks, it takes forever to get guys unpiled and things like that. Probably should have put him in on 3rd down, is what my response to that would be, and then he would have already been out there. But I get the feeling that Arthur Smith is very okay with more of Justin Fields coming out of that conversation.
Yeah. And so actually, somebody asked me a question. I'll tie it in on the back end of this once you give me the answer on this. But is there any reason to believe that we would see more or less based off of being a short week, or that wouldn't play into it?
Well, I'll say this. I think it's a lot more like if you want to do something different on a short week, running the plays you've already have installed with just a different person who has already done it. Like, if you want to change up, like, it's hard to put like, remember last year, and I know you remember, but I'm going to refresh the audience. Like, the Steelers came out against the Browns last year with a defense they've literally never played before, with Minkah Fitzpatrick at outside corner, confused the heck out of them and got a turnover on the first play of the game. Like, they had put that in training camp, getting ready for the Browns. And what was that, week 2 or week 3? And
Monday night.
And so they had that trap set for a long time. It's awfully tough to do something like that on a short week. I would say it's actually impossible to do something like that on a short week. But if you want to change up, if you want a different look, doing the things you already do with a person who is a vastly different athlete, who does them in a very different way, can be a really effective way to do that. And of course, Justin Fields is already up to speed. He already knows all the rest of the players on the offense. He's already been in the game. So there's like not any real downside to doing that. And so I do think it's an effective changeup that can be executed on a short week. Whereas like installing a package of plays where Justin Fields lines up at wide receiver, like, that's not happening this week. Like, I just they don't have time to do that. But you don't need any time to just call the same plays you already called with the guys who already ran them.
Yeah. So the second thing that I was going to bring up then, because somebody asked me this question and figured I'd bring it up to you, is somebody asked basically like on a short week, because of the workload that players would have just had on a Sunday, you think about like Nick Herbig all of a sudden having to play 80% of the snaps, which we probably thought there's going to be more of a split with Preston Smith. How much more important do the depth guys become on a short week because of the reps that like the starters had to play on Sunday?
I think it depends on what kind of game you get. If you get like long sustained drives on either side of the ball, I think you always substitute more freely on Thursday night. But if you're getting a bunch of 3 and outs and it's like 3 plays offense, 3 plays defense, 3 plays offense, 3 plays defense, or even if it's like 8 plays, like the Steelers had a whole bunch of 8-play drives against the Ravens. And so 8-play drives are perfect for keeping your guys fresh because nobody gets tired in 8 plays, and then you kick the ball back, and then and so I think if you have sustained drives on Thursday night, you got to make changes. You got to sub a little freer than you usually do, especially on defense. Like the defensive line, I really think they probably should find a way to get Braden Fehoko into the game this week. I don't think they are, but I think they should because I think the ability to roll a second whole defensive line is you get into those situations where you're giving up first down after first down and it's a 10-play drive. You got to be able to change guys out. And so, I think this is a game where you see all those guys. I think you'll see a lot more Preston Smith. And I think Mike Williams specifically is someone that they're playing. That's sort of a different conversation and we talked about him this morning. He has a natural build up to learning the offense. Like that just takes time. And so there's been stuff in each of the first 2 weeks that he wasn't up to speed on that they couldn't call with him in the game. And that number keeps shrinking the longer he's here, the more meetings, the more practice, the more time he has to play the book, that kind of thing.
Should feel really good though about following this game against Cleveland because then you have like that week and a half, basically a mini bye for where he'll be at mentally with the offense before playing Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think if they can get out of this game healthy, you could be looking at Alex Highsmith back. You could be looking at Roman Wilson back. I don't think Mont quite yet, but and then Preston Smith fully up to speed. Mike Williams fully up to speed. A couple of those guys have been playing through some nagging stuff, fully on the other side of their injuries. Now you got to get through this one intact. And Thursday nights are brutal for injuries, so that's saying something. But I do think there's a chance to really put maybe the best version of this team they've had on the field all season next week at Cincinnati. I agree with that.
It's interesting too. The names that you brought up there, like Preston Smith, I brought up the snaps there for a reason because the person that asked me this question was using that example. They were wondering if we saw that, that heightened snap count for Herbig and less for Preston Smith because of having the short week and thinking, okay, Preston's going to have to play more on a short week and stuff like that. So I was curious to get your take on it from that perspective.
Yeah. So I actually asked Mike Tomlin that yesterday, and he said it was because the drives were so short because they didn't give up any long drives that he didn't have to take Herbig off as much as he thought he was going to.
Yeah, that makes sense. We've been talking a lot about here defensive recently. Anything from TA today that jumped off the page, whether it was, anything going back, although they don't really do that. Like no one looks back and says much about the Ravens, especially in a short week. They're just looking forward to the Browns. And I'm sure Nick Chubb's name got brought up.
Yeah. Actually, I did look back. I asked TA a question about his defense, and it brings me back to something that is a fun story. So I'm happy about it. The Steelers dominated the Ravens offense. They had come in averaging 31.8 points per game. They got just under half or just over half that at 16. And the Steelers did that with one coverage sack by TJ Watt, no sacks from Cam Hayward. I don't even think he had a tackle for loss. He did have a pass breakup. No splash plays whatsoever from Minkah Fitzpatrick. So the Steelers dominated the Ravens with minimal impact. I don't want to say those guys played poorly, but those guys are capable of single-handedly winning the Steelers the game, each of them. None of them even came close to that kind of performance. And yet the Steelers completely dominated the Ravens with most of the big contributions coming from Peyton Wilson, Nick Herbig, Joey Porter, Dean Lowry had a sack and a PBU. Patrick Queen was awesome. And I asked TA, what does that tell you about your defense? What as a coach, what does that And he basically, said that's the best that's like the best way to tell you have a great defense, is that you're not depending on your bell cows to do it, that anybody can do it. And, it was Joey Porter that was the guy up, giving the message before that 2-point conversion about what they had seen and what they were expecting to see and what the game plan was. I think that's a really, really strong, like when you think about the 2008 Steelers defense and how great they were, and obviously they were great, but I think the thing that makes the 2008 Steelers defense is not great, they had Troy Polamalu and James Harrison. It's the right? It's and Aaron Smith and James Ferrier and Ryan Clark and you just keep going, right? Because there were so are those two, Troy and Harrison, they're probably the only Hall of Famers there, and Harrison isn't in yet, and maybe he has an uphill climb to get there. It wasn't the defense full of Hall of Famers, but it was just, it had so many dudes. And I think that's where the Steelers are getting with this defense, where there's so many guys that you feel good about. They have TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and Minkah Fitzpatrick, but it's and Herbig, Peyton Wilson, Joey Porter, Patrick Queen, Elandon Roberts, down and down the line, Keanu Benton. You feel good about where's the weakness? Beanie Bishop, who should be the weakness, had a nearly flawless game. There's just, I don't see one. It feels like a defense that's almost impossible to attack, and just in terms of a weakness of personnel. And not all those dudes are elite, but they're all dudes, and I think you're really seeing it.
Yeah, it's they all complement, I think, each other well. They have obviously the high end talent, but where they don't have it, they just have guys that fit together really nicely. Like Deshaun Elliott, who has played certainly at an all pro level this year. No one was talking about him like that though. It's just how good of a fit he is specifically for what the team is asking him to do and moving him around. And Alan, I want to circle back to a conversation, because I said, coming out of that Washington game, despite how well the Steelers defense was playing and we were having those conversations, there were still some people that were a bit skeptical and wanted to see them go against this Ravens team first. Not only, and we talked about how obviously from all angles how well they've held them down, and certainly, but I don't know that we talked enough about the other thing that I brought up within that conversation was TA mixing up the looks and being more creative in terms of what they were showing teams as well, because they've been obviously pretty vanilla, but they didn't really have to change what they were doing. I feel like we've seen a shift there as well, and they're throwing some different looks now. And I talked about obviously Cam Sutton, who can do a lot of different things on the back end, being part of them incorporating more stuff. But now I feel like not only did we get an answer in terms of what this team would look like against an elite offense, we're also seeing them now get a little bit more exotic with the looks that they're showing.
And I think it shows the depth, because they can do so many different, maybe not depth is the right word, but the different pieces they have fit to you're going to run a bunch of different packages with Cam Sutton in a bunch of different places, and Beanie Bishop and Deshaun Elliott and DeMonte KZ, and the way they can do it all together, I think is really, it fits. It just really fits really well. So I'll tell a story here. I have the former Pitt running backs and special teams coach, Andre Powell, is one of my favorite coaches that I've covered. And he used to have a saying. Well, it's not really a saying. It's just one-ish word. When he would talk about his players and that kind of thing, is he would just say, all of them. Which, he's from the South, so you kind of just all of them, right? But he would just make it one word, ALLUM, all of them.
Yeah. It's like if you're talking about two, both of them.
Both of them, right? Yeah. But this, right? It's like both of them, all of them. That was the Andre Powell word. In fact, some of his guys actually got shirts made that said all of them.
That's awesome.
Steelers defense is firing with all of them. There is no, it is. You can't even say 11, because Nick Herbig's not a starter. Peyton Wilson's not a starter. Dean Lowry's not a starter. It's 25 deep, all of them on that Steelers defense. They're cooking right now.
Man, I love that. That needs to get brought up to them so they can start running with that moniker as well. Okay, anything else from TA about. I mentioned the Nick Chubb thing as well.
Just somebody asked him like, he basically said if you go back and look at the history of these games, as Nick Chubb go the Browns. Like there's not really any secret that if you don't stop him, you're not going to be in a good place, and if you do stop him, you're probably going to be okay. And I mean, not to minimize the rest of the Cleveland offense, but I'll minimize the rest of the Cleveland offense. That's really all there is to be afraid of. So, yeah,
and he's still a very physical runner and stuff like that. But man, like, and maybe his legs are getting. I didn't watch their last game back or anything like that. Maybe he's still getting his legs underneath him. I haven't seen the burst. I haven't seen him look as effective getting to the outside. Like he can still obviously run with power and. In between the tackles, he's still going to be a force, but like that getaway speed I haven't seen, and I haven't seen the burst to get to the outside. So I'm curious to see how different it is in terms of defending him now. But what have you seen from him, if anything different?
The thing I see is their offensive line isn't as good as it used to be.
Oh, sure.
There just are not those like gaping holes that he would get. Mm-hmm. I think he's having to work a lot harder. And I'm not sure he's not built like Najee Harris. Like that's not his thing. Like he is, give me a seam and I'll turn it into 10 or 15 yards, but no seam, not loving life. And that's what I really see when I've watched I did not watch the Saints game, but I watched the Bengals game and one other one he was in. Baltimore. Yeah. I think, I'm not seeing the running room really that he's accustomed to.
And I would think that's not going to get any better on Thursday night when you look at how the Steelers have played against the run for the most part and the state of that offensive line.
DeJuan Jones is out.
Only seeming to get worse.
Left tackle for them. He's out for the rest of the year, I think.
Yeah,
I may have he's on the injured reserve with looked like a pretty serious ankle injury. I'm not sure that actually officially ruled him out for the year. He's certainly out for the 2 games against the Steelers. Big loss there. Jedrick Wills, who had been their starter and then lost his job to Jones, maybe coming back. He's been out with a knee injury. He was limited in practice today. And after that, it's a couple of real journeymen down there. So I mean, I think the Browns offensive line that was always the strength of that team has been really beat up the last couple of years. They're starting to get older. I'm not sure it's definitely not the dominant unit that it was, 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, like Teller and Batonio talked about just recently as 2 years ago as the best guard duo easily in football and what they could do in that interior and controlling the line of scrimmage from there. But yeah, broken fibula was what was announced for DeJuan Jones.
Oh, so I mean that's at least 8 weeks. It's already week 12. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. And in terms of Jed Wills, did you I guess you got to give him credit for being honest. The admission, that he was making a business decision to not be playing previously. So, how much does he even want to be out there? How much do they want him out there? Out of necessity, he's probably going to have to be.
I think he's going to play, but what a bizarre situation that is.
Interesting stuff.
And then, if you are making a business decision, why are you playing on the short week? This would be the week to not play as a bit. I don't know. Yeah, it's things are bad in Cleveland, but also, why are you going to go out there and break yourself for this team that's just clearly going nowhere? I feel like the rails are off, and I wouldn't go out there half injured for the Browns right now. I would. So I'm not gonna blame him if he doesn't.
Absolutely not. Anything else? 34 minutes already, so if there is anything else, you're gonna have to win.
Myles Garrett said some vaguely insulting things about TJ Watt skipping the NFL honors ceremony last year. I asked TJ not directly about it because I do want to say this. I did not ask TJ what Garrett had said because he literally came off the practice field and talked to us, and I was sure that he had not seen it. And so, it's pretty unfair to be like, "Hey, Myles Garrett said this about you. What do you think?" But that was the only time we're going to talk to TJ this week. So I kind of gave a does it mean anything extra to you? The whole league is watching.
Sure.
To be performing, opposite him, and he said no, not really. Like he has a lot of respect for Garrett and a lot of other players, but it's Steelers versus the Browns, and I hope we win. And that's it. So I think there's a large amount of nothing there, but
Right. Yeah, I don't have a take on it, to be honest. So, but I'm sure a lot of people in the comments do. So please let us know how you feel about Myles Garrett's comments regarding the TJ Watt last year. Not even like, we're talking about the 2023 Defensive Player of the Year award now on November 19th.
I have a take on the 2023 Defensive Player of the Year award, but we do not have time for that.
Yeah, and the take doesn't involve anything that actually happened today. It involves the voting for the award in 2020 for the 2023 award. Alan, tell the people they can find you
at @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and on Blue Sky. There is no underscore. It's just @SaundersPGH.
Oh, okay.
They don't do underscores, I guess. I like them personally. SteelersNow.com, PGH Steelers Now sites account on all of those sites as well. SteelersNow.com, read the word so I can get paid. Like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications here on YouTube. And we'll have another one of these tomorrow. We'll have another Steelers Morning Rush. We'll have more sights and sounds. We'll have all kinds of stuff. So don't miss it.
Yeah, a lot of content, which means we need questions. So drop those down below as well. Your thoughts.
It was a good question day. I feel like tomorrow's a good question day. So you got some questions for us for tomorrow. Load them up here.
There we go. And if you're listening somewhere else, be sure to leave us a 5-star review and subscribe over there. That's Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. Do that for us over there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do that on TikTok as well and give us a follow over there. And then follow me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH, including Blue Sky. No underscore on any of those. So don't have to worry about that for me on mine. So next time, for Alan Saunders, Zachary Smith, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.